world building. I was sitting there and actually figuring out all of this stuff about D&D. I was learning the entire history of Dungeons and Dragons. I was learning why each creature, each species is the way that it is. Why do they behave that way? Why do they look that way? Why do they act that way? Where are they from? What motivates them? I studied all of this stuff as part of just being a dungeon master. This is normal for me, just constantly knowing all of this information. I made sure to put all of this knowledge to good use. I made sure to, apply myself in my study of this knowledge, in my study of this vast database entry of information. And as a result, I found that I was quite knowledgeable on many different topics. People don't appreciate that. I don't know why. Some people do appreciate it, but some people don't appreciate that. And I don't know why. I don't care why. It's not my job to care for them. It's not my job to care about whether or not they care. It's not my job, not my position. I'll let someone else handle whether or not it's up to them to care. Specifically, it's the GM's job to decide whether or not they should care about all of this information. Me being a GM for my campaign, I get to decide whether or not that information is useful in my campaign. And yes, a lot of the information is useful. However, I don't expect everyone to be a rules lawyer. I expect people to know their character. If you're sitting there and you're a druid and you don't know your basic druidic abilities, you're going to find that you're going to need to study a lot more, and then things are going to get a lot easier for you once you've done that, because you're going to understand intuitively how your class actually functions, how it should respond, how it should work. And then you're going to be able to sit there and creatively work on your build, your class, for whatever you want to do with it. That is something worth noting. If you want to join my campaign, your character will need a goal, some form of objective, a very long-term goal, because these characters will be advancing to level 80. You will additionally want to work towards locating some form of teacher for your chosen classes. Your first class, you obviously will already have been taught how to be whatever you are picking. If you're picking sorcerer, then of course it's an innate caster, meaning your abilities come from within. You are your own teacher. It's kind of understandable why you start off at level 1 there. But if you're a monk, then you need to go out and practice your meditation in the world, because even the best monks will tell you, oh yes, meditation is the way. And then a good majority of those best monks will still manage to struggle to actually keep calm and embrace the calm mindset, the meditation mindset that they themselves have been professing is the way. You want to make sure that your character has some form of goal. Do they want to be a ranger? Okay, well, then they should have the goal of finding someone who is a good ranger to teach them. They want to find someone who is competent. They want to find someone who is going to have the capacity to teach them what they want to know. That is going to be a very relevant and important and a very good goal for your character to grow. If your character wants to be a fighter, well, then perhaps you should probably go and find the best fighter that you can think of. You want to go out and find some real amazing fighters to challenge and really test your strength and just basically become the best fighter of whatever variety you're going for. For your class. That's your goal. These are various goals that your character is able to have, your character is capable of having. And because we're going all the way to level 80, these goals can be sometimes quite grand. Sometimes these goals can be just very basic, very simple. Depending on what you want your character to do, the character will have different objectives in mind. I can work with you on some of this, but for the most part, it will be mostly your own progression. It's, a bit of a sandbox type of situation, which is kind of normal for D&D, from what I've experienced. From what I've seen, Adventurers League, for example, just kind of uses the sandbox method, where it's like, okay, well, here's what we're doing. You can either do this, or you can just go and do whatever. But since you already agreed to join us, you're doing this. And it's like, okay, well, fine. But, I don't do that. If you want to go and wander off from the party because maybe your character doesn't trust the ooze, the oozekin looks like they might betray the party, and you're just like, well, I don't trust you people. You people look crazy. I'm going to go wander off and do my own thing. Word of advice, first off, you might want to look into getting a hireling. The second thing you might want is you might want to be very careful about travel, because the encounters are just by region. They're not leveled to the player. Okay, this does create a few very interesting situations where every now and then you will find yourself fighting something very, very much a higher level than yourself. And, you can work towards, crafting. You can work towards basically just doing any of the normal tasks that you would do in Dungeons and Dragons. I do a more rapid crafting if you are actively crafting the item, because I find that taking a year to craft an entire plate mail is a bit obscene when you're supposed to be this character that is making use of all of their skills, all of their expertise, and they're even going out and hunting raw materials, and they're gathering all of these various pieces and bits and bobs and whatnot, and they're doing all of this work for crafting this item, and they're making a custom piece of armor specifically for themselves or for something that they are very familiar with. I find that will not quite be a worthwhile endeavor as far as how to spend your character's time. I find that that's not quite accurate. It doesn't take everyone a full year in order to craft the same piece of armor. Some people it will take less time, some people it will take more time, but the point is that the people are trying, and everyone has different skills and different rates of progress, and it really makes things a lot more balanced, which I know is something that Wizards of the Coast struggles with in crafting in D&D, is balance. There is zero thought put into the balancing of the crafting mechanic, because mostly they're still working on the combat situations, because they have so many players just dying at really low levels that any of the characters that do make it to the higher levels will usually just end up getting completely obliterated because they can't balance any of the combat, because they're still focusing on the low-level combat as opposed to the high-level combat, which is where they actually need to put their attention. Of course the low-level people are all dying. Of course the low-level encounters are getting fought more often. If they put some thought and effort into balancing the high-level encounters, they would find that the high-level encounters are actually what is causing the most issue in Adventures League. These dungeon masters are somewhat inexperienced at times, and then you have them run monsters like the Nefelschnee, or whatever you pronounce it as, which is just this weird demon that is basically trapped inside of a monument, according to Puffin Forest. It's just this weird demon that just kind of runs away after a while because, it can't kill the players, and the players can't kill it, and eventually they just kind of burn through each other's resources, and then it runs away. And it's like, well, that was a thing. That was a fight. That was an encounter. How do you guys feel? I feel ripped off. Yeah, me too. It's kind of absurd just how much content these these people didn't actually review. Wizards of the Coast could have done so much more, but they didn't. And that's kind of what's really, really important here, is they could have, but they didn't. They could have done a lot more things to really ramp up the difficulty. They could have done a lot more things to, stabilize the combat. They could have done plenty more things to really make things interesting for the people playing. Unfortunately, Wizards of the Coast didn't do any of that, which kind of sucks. Because that leaves it up to us, the GM, the players, and, the various people who have applied ourselves to the world crafting enough to understand that the older books really did cover a lot of material that really should have been covered in these newer books, but Wizards of the Coast removed all of that information for whatever reason. Now, that's not to say that it's removed permanently. All of the previous books are canon, meaning they are official content. They are officially endorsed by Wizards of the Coast as official content. And that's amazing. That is great news, because that means that, we have plenty of content still to review and go over and basically make sure that we, know all of this amazing lore about the world. Unfortunately, Wizards of the Coast forgot to handle the situation where, we want to be able to customize all of these scenarios and situations, and we want to be able to, have customized enemies, and we want to have it where they have a variable race, and we want to have it where the enemies are able to be like all of these different types of cool monsters. And Wizards of the Coast forgot about all of that and just said, nope, we're not going to do any of that for you. Instead, you guys can do that if you want, but instead we're just going to give you this more basic rule, this more basic ruling of how to operate things. And if you manage to follow along with it, you might notice that it's based on the exact same rules as in previous editions. The exact same. Like, literally. They reworded it, they adjusted a little bit, but for the most part, it's just very broken 3.5 edition homebrew. The Tarrasque is now much smaller, meaning the Tarrasque has less health than it used to have. The Tarrasque is easier to kill than in previous editions, where in previous editions you literally needed the wish spell to kill it. Now you just do a bunch of damage and then it just slumbers in stone, I guess. Plenty of people have killed the Tarrasque, but the problem is the Tarrasque keeps coming back. The monster manual never actually discusses how or why or where or what mechanism is the Tarrasque making use of in order to accomplish this feat. I've looked it up in the DMG, the Dungeon Master's Guide. I've looked it up in the Monster Manual. I've looked it up in the Player's Handbook. I've looked it up in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. I've looked it up in all of the different books that they have released. And Wizards of the Coast has not yet covered why is the Tarrasque unkillable. What has allowed the Tarrasque to endure for so long? Wizards of the Coast doesn't tell you. But if you look up the content creator Mr. Rex, spelled RHEXX, then you will find that there is a lot of information that they do not tell you about the Tarrasque. For example, the Tarask is a divine beast. They don't tell you that anywhere in any of the books from Wizards of the Coast. That is in none of the books that they have published. Okay? They just don't tell you. Point blank. You know, and that's annoying. That is really annoying because they're supposed to tell you. They are the ones publishing all of these books, and they're sitting there just not doing their job, basically. And that's annoying. Like, you want things that function as they are supposed to. In this case, it is supposed to be, you know, the people providing the rules are supposed to actually be telling you the rules. You know, this is why this monster can't die. Cool. You know, that's amazing. But, like, they don't tell you that, and that's kind of sad. Because that's the type of lore that really makes Dungeons and Dragons interesting to the game master and the player, both. Like, that's the type of knowledge that the people want to know. That's the type of information that's useful. You know, yeah, the Tarask is kind of vulnerable to acid a little bit. Why is it vulnerable to acid? Well, it's because the acid gets in the way of it regenerating. Do they ever tell you that? No. But, you know, acid is effective. Do they ever tell you why? No. Do they ever tell you that it's effective? Not exactly. They let you figure out that acid works really well, and acid is usually in large abundance as far as availability. However, you know, people don't really know why the Tarask survives. And the reason is because it's a divine beast. That's why it survives. You know, are you kidding me? It was ordained by the gods specifically for the purpose of, like, taking care of adventurers that were problematic. It's got magical resistance given to it as a divine blessing by Mistra. It has, you know, physical resistances given to it by various other gods, on top of the fact that it just generally is difficult to kill. You know, it has a hardened carapace. It has all of these other features about it that people just don't know about because, you know, they just weren't informed that this is a feature of the creature. And the responsibility of informing people about this type of information falls on Wizards of the Coast. And they're just not doing their responsibility. They're not fulfilling their responsibility. And that's a problem. You know, we want Wizards of the Coast to do their duty, and they're not. And that's a problem. And, you know, they might apologize, they might not. But the point of the matter is, the fact of the matter is that, you know, we still need this information. Even if Wizards of the Coast is not providing it, we still need this information. And it's information like that that I studied when I was studying to be a game master, when I was studying to, you know, master my class, as it were. When I was studying sorcerer, when I was studying wizard, when I was studying cleric, you know, I was sitting there studying things like, you know, what are the different dragons? What is a gemstone dragon? What are the chromatic dragons? What are the differences between the gemstone dragons and the chromatic dragons? Why are there differences between the gemstone dragons and chromatic dragons? What has caused all of these different differences? I looked into all of this information and I found answers. Now, Wizards of the Coast has officially stated the previous editions are official. That is all they were allowed to say on the matter of previous editions. But additionally, Wizards of the Coast pointed out situations such as what happens when a god realizes that they are a god of, all-knowing, a god of omnipotence, and yet they realize that there is a domain which they do not yet possess any power over. What happens then? What does the god do? How does the god act? How does that affect their personality? How does that affect their predisposition? How does that affect their spellcasting? Their clerics? Do they have clerics? Stuff like that. They go in depth in all of these questions, but they don't really explain it. They haven't gone so far as to actually, mention to us players or game masters, either one, what the consequences of these actions are. As far as Dungeons and Dragons, they have not theory crafted for us. They have not worked with us on this. They haven't really gone in depth, in detail, on any of these different topics. What happens when the gods of Greyhawk realize that Greyhawk is but the beginning? Greyhawk is just the start, the tip of the iceberg. What happens when these gods realize that, the elemental planes are but one aspect of their domain? What happens when the gods realize that there is more than one of each type of elemental plane? Because, as you'll recall, the Dragonborns are actually not from the prime material plane. The Dragonborns are from the alternate plane. They're from the secondary plane of existence, which was created for the dragons to rule over without the intervention of divine beasts, without the intervention of divinity, without the intervention of gods. It is a literal godless plane. It doesn't cover any of that information in any of the textbooks, any of the handbooks. That's just not talked about anywhere. And that's a problem, because we want information. We want knowledge. Knowledge is power. They say, you want to have a character who's wise. You want to have a character who's smart. You want to have a character who's strong. Okay, well, here's a wise, smart, strong character. Tell me about the elemental plane of fire that the Dragonborns would have visited, that the Dragonborns would have drawn power from. Tell me about that elemental plane of fire, not the prime material plane elemental plane of fire, but the other elemental plane of fire from the other world. Tell me about that elemental plane of fire. There is no information on that subject. That's simple. There's just no information. It doesn't exist. it's not been published by Wizards of the Coast, and therefore there is no information officially on the elemental plane of fire in the alternate dimension that the Dragonborns are from. And that's something worth asking them about. Ask them about that. I dare you. I double dare you. Ask them, hey, Wizards of the Coast, what's the elemental plane of fire like in the perspective of the Dragonborns, the original Dragonborns, the true Dragonborns? What is their take on the elemental plane of fire? The Dragonborns which do not reproduce. Because they were created in elemental forges specifically. If you're not familiar with Dragonborns, that is where Dragonborns come from. They were created in an elemental forge. However, currently the elemental forge in their homeworld is broken, and the only thing that survives these days is red Dragonborns. The other elements of Dragonborn do not survive the process of being created anymore. They used to, but they do not anymore. And this was because the spell plague specifically damaged the machinery which was used to create them. And now it burns much hotter than it's supposed to, meaning that the elemental forge is not functioning properly. Can it be fixed? Possibly. However, does our character know that it's even a thing? Not really. Can they learn? Possibly. Can they figure out how to fix it? Possibly. With enough dragon shards, I'm sure it is definitely possible to fix the elemental forge, which is used to create Dragonborns of all colors. And that way you would be able to have, true Dragonborns. If you want a plot line that is associated with this type of quest, I would like to refer to StarCraft 2 for inspiration, as it is very similar in plot to what Kerrigan went through as she explored the primal Zerg aspect of Zerg in StarCraft 2, before becoming a Xel'Naga, that is. The Xel'Naga being something entirely StarCraft related and not at all Dungeons and Dragons related. I am aware that there are Nagas in Dungeons and Dragons, but that is specifically because Naga specifically translates to snake, or snake person, more specifically. Therefore, of course, there are Nagas. There's also Nagas in Final Fantasy XI, in Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy Tactics, and just a lot of Final Fantasy games. There's additionally Lamias, which are very similar to Nagas, but aren't Nagas. As a matter of fact, if a Lamia ever manages to catch a glimpse of a Naga, it will be as though a gold dragon and a black dragon, I believe it was, or a silver dragon, had managed to lock eyes with each other. the chromatic dragons and the non-chromatic dragons are very, very prominent enemies of each other, genetically speaking. Like, they hate each other to the point where it literally will defy all of their logic in order for them to just attack this creature. Even if it is a baby, even if it is helpless and defenseless, the good dragon will still attack the creature because they are that spiteful of the other dragon type, for one reason or another. In the case of a gold dragon, they believe that the silver dragon will never repent, will never be good, will never behave, all of that stuff. They believe that silver dragons are entirely irredeemable. Zero chance of redemption. Other dragon types that may prove fascinating, if perhaps this topic is a little tiring for you. Something that might catch your attention is the sword dragon. Its breath weapon is quite literally swords. This can actually be generalized as a slashing dragon, bludgeoning dragon, and piercing dragon. One can just shoot daggers. One can shoot, various bludgeoning objects. One can shoot like swords, but specifically, it's supposed to be a dragon that is capable of just spewing forth any form of weapon. It's not originally sorted into weapon types. It's normally just it sprays a breath of various weapons. That is that dragon's breath weapon. It is a very dangerous breath weapon because it means that you can basically get hit by almost any sword in the game, and that is a very dangerous sensation because that means you can get hit by, your best weapon. It's like, I thought that was in my bag of holding. Oh, it is. It just happens to also be in the breath weapon of this dragon. And it's like, oh, okay. Towards the end of Dungeons and Dragons, towards the higher levels of Dungeons and Dragons, it became quite obvious that that Gary Gygax, the original copyright holder of Dungeons and Dragons, I believe, was mostly just trying to come up with some method to kill the players with. For example, the Tomb of Annihilation, the whole point of it is to just basically be this massive resource sink where your players are expected to just have a small army at their beck and call, ready to go forth with exploring this tomb. And it's like, okay, tell you what, you get to go in first. If he doesn't report back after like 5 minutes saying he's okay, you go in, and then you give him 10 minutes, and then you go in, and each person will give the next person like 5 more minutes than the previous guy had, just in case they got a little bit farther. And it's like, cool, that's a decent way to drain your players of all of their resources, sure. But it does create kind of this, what's known as a slog, where it's just this endless, monotonous task where you're just throwing all of these various NPCs and characters that you probably don't actually care too much about into this dungeon, which is notorious for just not being able to be cleared. And the requirements for putting your players in a situation where they would sacrifice all of their NPCs in order to, clear this dungeon is that basically if they don't, according to the quest, if they don't, then this person in this tomb is going to resurrect their god or something. But if you phase shift or plane shift or misty step in some way, then your character supposedly just doesn't return. They disappear as normal, but then they just don't reappear. My character actually managed to figure this one out the hard way, and they were like, well, you can't fight it because it's a god. What are you gonna do? And I said, oh, I had a plan. Don't get me wrong, I had a plan. And they're like, oh, what were you gonna do? I was gonna say, well, I'm there to stop some god thing, right? And it's like, hey, you're this god that is supposed to be ruling over this place, right? And they'd have been like, yeah. And I'd have been like, so you're trying to stop these people from getting into your place and stuff, and you're probably just gonna want to kill me, huh? And they're like, yeah, the thought crossed my mind. Well, I'm gonna tell you the same thing I told Hades. Wanna make a deal? And the GM just looked at me. This was over Discord, and I couldn't see them, but I could tell they were just looking they were giving that look that just says, really? You're gonna make a deal with a god? And it's like, well, here's the thing. All of these players are trying to, advance into your place here, right? This is technically your home. I can clear out all of the people from your place, and I can help you out with that. And in return, you just gotta let me live. Easiest job ever, right? I probably will be popping back in quite frequently because I prepared a lot of phase shifting spells. It's kind of my thing. I just kind of plane shift. But I can bring them to you, and then you can just be like, ha ha ha, puny mortal, and you can deal with them in whatever way you see fit, because suddenly they're in your domain and you're God and stuff. And they were like, huh, I kind of like that plan. All right, you might be useful yet. I could use you. You're offering to basically to basically do my job for me as just this added level of difficulty. You are this extra trap in my plans that I did not expect having, but I have. Cool. And then basically she was going to take that opportunity and use it to entirely screw over the gods' plans, because she said everyone, meaning not just her teammates, but also she's going to phase shift the guy who's trying to resurrect the god. And she's like, she's just going to be like, oh, you want to meet your god. You want to have your god here so that you can have Senpai notice you. Okay, tell you what, here you go. I cast phase shift on him, and he's gonna teleport to the other plane, and now he's going to be with his god. And mission accomplished. I held up my end of the deal, Mr. Deity, and now there's no other people left in this domain. I will now just kind of be wandering off into the sunset. It's like, hey, wait a minute. It's like, what? It said nobody returns, right? Yeah. Well, he phase shifted. He doesn't return, right? But he's the bad guy. Well, he shouldn't have phase shifted. He didn't prepare any plane shift spells or anything. It's like, how did you do that? It's like, that is a trade secret. Because, you're just sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, there is no possible way that, the players could possibly use the bad guy's plans against them. And to the GM who thinks that, I say, you clearly have never watched a single episode of Doctor Who. Okay? That is my specialty, is using people's words against them. That's why I make an excellent game master, is because that's just natural for me, I'm sitting here going, okay, you're telling me you want to pick up the shiny gem, okay, and so you say you want to touch it, okay, roll a con save. It's like, crap. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's a shame you're not a sorcerer. Sorcerers are proficient in con saves. It's like, oh, really? Why'd you have to mention that? It's like, because they are? It's like, yes, but, I could have been a sorcerer, but I'm not. It's like, whose fault is that? Not mine, not yours. That's your character's backstory's fault. And partially yours, because you were the one making the character. But, there's just that much to, there's that much type of information to really just pay attention to. That's why people sometimes don't get along with me in D&D games, is because I can be a bit of a stickler for the rules because I studied the rules so much. But I also understand that, yes, the GM has the final say. But until the GM is made aware of what the original rule is for the, for the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, they're not really qualified to go changing the rules until they know what the rules are. If they don't know what the rules are, how can they change it? That's not changing the rules, that's making up rules. There's a difference. A very big difference. I am aware that I have been discussing Dungeons and Dragons for the last 2 hours, but it's something that's on my mind because I have a D&D session today, and then I have a D&D session tomorrow. I have 2 D&D sessions in 2 days, in the span of 2 days, and that's going to cause a bit of excitement and exuberance and enthusiasm in addition to causing my players to possibly end up suffering an unfortunate fate at the hands of some various monsters that I have not yet decided upon. I might use really dangerous monsters, I might use not very dangerous monsters. I haven't really decided yet. You know, there's a lot of variables to take into consideration. I might want strong monsters, I might want weak monsters, I might want effect monsters, I might want monsters that are known for causing all kinds of ailments. I might want monsters that don't cause ailments. I probably want monsters that cause ailments because I'm gonna be honest, my players are very OP in my campaign, to the point where, like, they got poisoned recently and it was a minor inconvenience. They're very OP. Very, very OP. I have now gone through, filled in that area down below. I really do need to merge these two floors. Because as you can tell, like, this part is going to get covered, and then this floor is going to drop down. Like, you can tell that because of this lantern right here. I might get started on that, actually, but I do need this villager trading hall. Therefore, I really should prepare the villager trading hall now that I have a bit of room in the storage chest. Not much, but I have some room. That means I really should prepare for some form of villager trading hall. I'm going to do the villager trading hall here at x equals 300 because it's far enough away from my base that if I go all the way over here, I can measure, yeah, it's about 80 blocks away from anything. Yeah, pretty much anything. Let me craft that 1 block of slime, deposit that 1 block of slime, and then I need to start marking out, which means I need smooth stone. I need to start marking out the location of the walls. I need to mark out the location of the floors. I need to mark out all of this different stuff at x equals 300. I need to additionally dig out certain areas. I will need to work on the lighting. Okay, I don't remember specifically where the chunk border was as far as this angle. Let me actually enable that. Okay, I have enabled the chunk border visualization. I will want to move this over to here, actually. Not just at 300, but I want to move it over to, let's see, where is this? 305. Yeah, this is 80 blocks away from anything else in anywhere that I've built. And now I want to map out where all of the different holding cells will be for the villagers. I will need to move the rail, obviously. Then 2 wide, and then yep. 1, 2, 3. Okay.